So that's kind of my thing, is like, it takes 30 seconds to follow a Twitter account and put your email address on. And I know a lot of people are saying that, we could be better spending our time supporting down ballot candidates, and that's great. I really support that. But like, if you think this idea is like even somewhat interesting, and I would think that most people who are into Yang at least think that a heterodox view of politics is interesting, because that's what this is, then the 30 seconds it takes to follow and put your email address on is worth it to see if that person would make the jump, and then we could be in a whole different ballgame. So that's what I think.
What do you think, Alex?
Well, I'd like to dispel any concerns that anyone listening or watching might have about the. Okay. So first of all, you don't want Yang or anyone getting into this. This is a proof of concept. You don't want anyone tarnishing anything. This is really just testing the fields. It's market research to see who values unity more than they value partisanship. And when you look at the polls, the majority of Americans do appreciate that. Look, but the bottom line is the Yang Gang are still united by a central set of nonpartisan ideas. And if we are to be successful in politics, we need to grow our voting bloc. So not having Yang-McRaven as the sticker and just using the generic or neutral dark horse duo, this enables us to, sorry, that's thunder and lightning. This enables us to actually, the dark horse duo group can actually be a lot bigger. It can be disaffected burners. It can be conservatives who want a golden bridge to get away from Trumpism. This is an opportunity, and like, we can seed the dark horse duo group with Yang people, and we can actually start getting these conversations going. And the only benefit, it can only be a benefit from increasing our group from beyond our very narrow lane of people who like Andrew Yang. More is better.
Then why not just say this is a movement to encourage all of us to think about outside the traditional two-party system, and this is a long-term initiative, and it's not trying to change November 3rd, 2020. Like, why even bring this 2020 conversation up to? We all agree we don't have a name. That means we're not going to get on the ballot. Like, why not play the long game?
So let me answer that. So I want to dispel with the fiction that people who are doing this dark horse duo thing would otherwise be campaigning and knocking doors for Biden. Look, let's be honest. Biden is not motivating. The thing about the dark horse duo run is it's so exciting that it really gets people all passionate and riled up. I mean, look at Twitter. Look at the conversations that we've been having about this thing. People are going insane for or against it, even though I think most of the energy and passion is actually coming from just being inside your house and being scared of economics or coronavirus. But the point is, I mean, just look what's happened. We've engaged people. I mean, if you trust the poll, 70% of people that weren't going to go for Biden, all of these people are so passionate now. I mean, I think that they were never going to get that excited about Biden doing, a half awake podcast out of a bunker. Yeah. This is nothing but good. And so the two are not mutually exclusive. I donate to Yang Gang Congress people all the time. I can do this too. All it does, listen, you get on Twitter, you click the link, you sign up your name. It's a simple game theoretic, split or steal. And I'm picking split. So, and guess what? Vote, if it doesn't work, vote for Biden. I mean, and let's be honest, it's probably not going to work, but let's do it. Let's get the people on board. Let's get the names. That come 2024, we have an email list we can send out propaganda to.
Fred, are you convinced? I mean, it sounds like one of the things that Cody and Alex are saying is that it's not necessarily about the names. It's more about kind of
it's
unifying people.
Totally 100% about the names, right? Like, to me, right? Like the way my, I might not be the charts and graphs, analytical guy, but I use data to make a decision, right? Like I don't get emotion. I don't make my emotion or make emotions the driving force of my decision-making process. So literally, like my brain doesn't work this way. Like if anybody's seen my my argument for or against the DHD, Dark Horse Duo, right? It is like, okay, these are the answers. These are the questions that need to be answered. And if we don't get these 5 to 6 questions answered, then the way my brain works, I can't make an informed decision. That's the way I think of it. Now, if we can get the people, obviously we've got Yeezy that came forward, and honestly, I legitimately think he sucks slightly less than Biden and Trump, right? He sucks slightly less. What?
He's not super stable.
What?
He's not super
We should
stable.
talk about.
He is terribly unstable, right? He is terribly unstable, right? I mean, he's a total narcissistic reality TV star and rapper, right? God bless his wife. And
like Kanye in the Situation Room at 3 in the morning.
That's not a conversation we need to have.
But the thing is, it's an FU to the establishment, right?
Well, that definitely would be FU to the establishment.
This whole thing.
Here's the kicker, and Brett actually said, "Hey, reach out to me, whatever." Right? My thing is, if I was going to pick a rap star, right, he would be him and Eminem would probably be my last picks, right? I would pick somebody like Common or even Killer Mike, right, which I'm not a big fan of because he blew off Yang, right? Like I could see somebody like Common being a presidential candidate, right? Or if I was going to pick an athlete, I could see somebody like a LeBron. Yeezy is, I will say he's a genius, right? He's a genius. But man, he's he's a terrible pick for president, right?
But you really want a name. You want someone.
Yeah.
I mean, Cody and Alex, it sounds like your position, if you took it to an extreme, like you don't even need a name.
Yeah, let me just chime in here. So I actually think it's better right now without a name, because once you get that name attached to it, you start pigeonholing it and you start kind of breaking it down in bad ways. We need to grow this concept, this idea. And so the thing that I loved about Andrew Yang is that Andrew Yang talked about the word incentives. Incentives control everything. People, especially smart, powerful people, do not do anything unless there are incentives, and they weigh the pros and the cons on both sides. That's how people work. And so it can make the incentive for this idea big enough. Believe me, the Weinsteins of the world are having conversations with smart, patriotic problem solvers right now, and it is not big enough of incentive for someone like that to jump in. So what I'm saying is, let's get enough energy behind this right now so that there is a big enough incentive for a smart person to jump in and be one of the two people that does this, because there's not enough incentive behind it now because it's too small. So we need to give it a chance for that to happen. And
but how does that grow? How do you grow a movement without a leader? And to be quite honest with you, I know people love Brett, right? Brett has 125,000 followers on his YouTube channel. And,
the connections that whole people, that world of like intellectual podcasters have is crazy. They can get in touch with most people that they wanted.
But
behind the scenes, he's advising Yang behind the scenes. Like, I wouldn't really worry too much about that.
Yeah, but here's the kicker, right? People like Andrew Yang or myself or Alex or you, Tom, we know who people like, the Weinsteins of the world, Sam Cedar, we know who Sam Harris is. If I go and ask, I asked my lady, hey, do you know who Brett Weinstein is? She was like, never heard of him. Right. And so if you don't have somebody like a Joe Rogan, right, who's like willing to go out on a limb and really yell this from the rooftops, what's that?
I'm just saying that these people will start yelling this from the rooftops once there is enough of a groundswell for this idea. So if we get 1 million people backing this idea, it will become part of the national conversation. Rogan will invite people on. Mainstream smart people will start considering being a part of this. They will start talking to people like The Rock. And I'm not going to say I'm not trying to say that would be an actual person. And I think the Kanye conversation is silly, but there's not incentive enough for smart people to take the risk to get onto this right now. So we have to build the incentive by having enough support behind this to at least give it a chance. If it doesn't work, that's fine. But we at least need to give it some type of chance by following it and saying that this is at least a good idea.
The argument for the dark horse duo is a large argument. It's a huge argument. The question I have is in logistics. And the way, I always bring it back to the way my brain makes decisions. I can't, there's not enough information. It's like there's an equation that I'm trying to solve for, and I don't have enough information to solve for that. And somebody expects me to get fired up about an idea that idea is set up under the constructs that there's a human being that carries said ideas. And if I don't know who that human being is and the character of that human being, therefore I cannot make an informed decision.
It's a logical way of looking at it.
So are you a Patriots fan?
Yeah.
I actually am a Patriots fan.
God, no.
I figured. You like to be on the winning team.
Well, I think Fred is making the point that how do we get excited about this? Like, if we take your analogy further, Alex, you're like, hey, you have we have the fixed menu, A or B, and then we have this a la carte thing. And then the guy's like, oh, well, what's on the a la carte? No, I can't tell you. Well, when is the a la carte meal going to be ready? I don't know. Maybe now, maybe later.
It's not.
It's like, well, I need to.
But we need you to support the a la carte menu so we can get the a la carte menu
so that we
out.
can find a chef that will cook it. It's like, I need to eat right now, goddammit. Let me show you guys. I want to get your reaction to this this Medium article that I think the Unity 2020 people put out. And there's a specific thing in there, Alex, where they talk about the spoiler risk. And the argument is, no, this will not be a spoiler. And I want to draw your attention to the third paragraph, which talks about a fail safe. And it says, if at a carefully chosen point prior to the general election, the Unity ticket has no viable path, the candidacy will be suspended. And you're an entrepreneur, Alex, like that is not super precise language. Like, when is this? What are the criteria for deciding that there's no viable path? Who makes that decision? Like, I feel like this is very hand wavy.
I understand your concerns, Tom. And I can't speak for the people that wrote this article. But for me, the paragraph rings pretty clear. which is if it has no viable path. So if it, as Cody said, if we don't have enough of a critical mass of signatures, if we don't have, the game theoretic quantity necessary to actually to pass it. For me personally, if I'm doing risk analysis, I would err on the side of caution because I truly do think that America cannot survive 4 more years of Trump. So for me, it's an easy question of when I would suspend the campaign. But I can't speak for the people managing it.
What if where you're at, like when you wrote this document, and where you're at 3 months from now are two totally different, and you're blinded by the addiction of hope that you can make it, right? And you're also, and this kind of happened to Yang Gang, right? Where it's going to be very obvious to us that hey, how's it going, Matt? We are not going to. We're not going to get media support, right? So, how are we going to determine how good we're doing if the dark horse duo was to come to pass, if we're not going to get media support? So people are going to be saying things like, oh, well, we're actually polling better than we are. That's going to be the argument. Is that your fear, Tom?
Fred,
yeah,
I would pretty obvious.
It's very
Is that your fear?
My
Tom?
fear, yeah. And let's say we were at work, like Fred. Let's say we're at a logistics company and we're like starting some new joint venture. We would say these are the criteria that we need to meet to kind of continue this business 6 months from now, or to raise another round of funding, or to invest in another fleet of trucks.
Yeah.
We would not say, well, look, we're going to start this new business. At some point in time in the future, if we determine that it's not viable, well, of course, we'll terminate that business. Like that, it just feels like we should have a specific goal, because this isn't like 3 years from now; it's 3 months from now.
That makes sense.
But Tom, specific goals, smart, measurable, actionable.
Yes.
That's all internal stuff. When you're in marketing, when you're trafficking in hype and you're dealing in passion, that's when it's really about just spreading the idea and testing the viability of the meme in itself.
All right, I want to welcome Matt from the very famous Zach and Matt show. This is the first time you've been in the Nerd Zone. So first of all, I need to get a hello, nerds from you.
Hello, nerds.
Oh, mission accomplished. But Matt, we were just talking about the whole spoiler risk and the fail safe. Yeah. And I was making the point like, all right, here's what it says. It doesn't seem super specific. Like if I were an investor, I might want to ask for some more kind of teeth in the language. And then Alex was saying, well, look, there might be those things internally, but you don't sell consumers on a business plan with like 1 million exhibits. I get that. What do you think, Matt? Do you think there's a risk that this effort, it changes the trajectory and the outcome of the general election, maybe unintentionally?
Well, I mean, in the plan itself, it's designed in a way where, of course, it has that fail-safe where it's like built into the plan. It's if it's not going to lead to a winning candidacy, it's just the plan is just going to be shut off. So, and I understand what you're saying is written into the language. It doesn't necessarily have like the concrete details of how it's going to happen. And then that just goes into the whole conversation of, well, we're 4 months away from this thing. It's still being hashed out, and which is kind of another conversation. But I wanted to talk about was just kind of why I feel like there's so many people that are even open to this dark horse duo idea in the first place. And I think a lot of it has to do with just where we are as a country. And this is something that Brett Weinstein talked about when he originally brought up the idea. We're in a global pandemic. Tens of millions of people are unemployed. worldwide protests. And then this is the statistic that really stands out to me. I think it showed 70% of Americans see this as the worst moment in American history at any point in their lifetimes, which is just an insane stat. We had 9/11, we can go all the way back to the Vietnam War, even for the older generations, World War II. And for many of them, this tops it. And when we think of we know that Trump's not going to fix anything. We know he's part of the problem, but people look at it and they say, can I reasonably actually expect Biden to fix it? Can I reasonably expect him to actually do anything? And this is a guy who said, part of his thing that he said behind the scenes to his donors, Wall Street, nothing will fundamentally change. And like one question I like to pose to like Biden supporters is, or just people who are like, we're really certain about Biden, is like, what policy can somebody reasonably expect for him to actually pass in the first year that is actually substantive, that's actually going to move the needle on anything? And the only one somebody could name to me was decriminalize marijuana. And it's like, okay, well, that's one. But then again, it's 2020 and he's a Democrat. He can't even be for legalization. So the point is that for a lot of people, they just don't see it as like Biden being this superior choice to Trump. And there's a lot of people who aren't going to vote for Biden simply because he's not Trump. And that's where I see there's a lot of people who are open to this dark horse duo idea. And there seems to be like two camps in the Yang gang. There's like that camp. And then there's the, we can't do anything that will risk Trump getting elected. And I understand both camps. So that's kind of why I think like with this, the whole conversation, how it's kind of transpired over the past 3 weeks. I feel like I feel like there just hasn't been a willingness on the two sides to try to understand each other. And it's led to this point where luckily we're going on shows like this, Tom, and having conversations. So
Matt, one question. At which point, like a week, 2 weeks, a month, at which point do you fold your tent and accept that we have two candidates and that's it?
Well, I mean, I've already accepted personally that we have two candidates, but like if someone else is going to try to do something and it has even 1% chance, it's like, well, why not? I mean, I'm talking about time frame. Are we thinking a week, 2 weeks, a month?
It doesn't matter. No.
I don't really know.
It doesn't matter.
Like
back to the a la carte menu that Alex talks about.
I'd say a month before.
Yeah. If I order my food, I have to have a reasonable expectation of the food coming to the table, right?
Of course. And as the groundswell for support for this idea grows, they will start to put out more specifics. But the fundamental problem is that, unfortunately, the way that politics is, it does not incentivize, and I don't want to offend anyone, like smart people, problem-solving people to go into it. And an idea like this would actually incentivize people who want to fix problems, who are smart, who are currently in like the private sector, solving problems that give them better like personal incentives. It would incentivize them to jump in and co-opt and take over this movement, and that's what we need. We elect for people that unfortunately are good at riling up people's emotions and making people good about kind of their internal beliefs, and then saying a lot of things, and then things don't really get done. That is what politicians are, unfortunately. And the only way to incentivize well-intentioned problem-solving people to get into politics is by something like this.
Well, that's where I guess I have a little bit of a concern in terms of the lack of transparency. Like if I think Unity said, hey, our goal is to get 10 million names. Here's where you sign up. This is the number that we have currently. If we get it by this date, we're going to consider that a clear signal that we need to draft some people. Mm-hmm. I just haven't seen any of the specifics.
Yeah. It's a great point.
Yeah, so it all comes down to deets. Like people want the lowdown on like what the plan is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would be shocked if those plans do not come out in the near future if we get a bit more of a groundswell.
We have 3 months. It's not even 4 months now. We have 3 months till election day.
I think what Alex is saying, what it reminds me of is, I don't know if you remember this, but back during the campaign in Q4, we had this idea where it was like, would you donate $2,800 or $500 or some way more money than you could usually afford to donate if you knew that it would lead to this like $30 million Q4? And there was like this idea going around, a bunch of people trying to pledge money. It's basically the same thing. You're basically saying, look, if this idea were to come into fruition, would I in theory support it over Biden or Trump? Sure. In terms of the actual details, I mean, that's like for the people who are organizing at the top, like Brett Weinstein, to come out with. And if they don't, like, well, we're just at the same place we are right now. It's just Trump versus Biden.
Okay, so at what point do we say, and I'm going to ask this question again, hopefully I can get a solid answer from somebody, right? At what point, a week, 2 weeks, a month, do you say, this idea is dead in the water? Shit canning.
So look, I would call, if I was going to give advice to Brett, I'm not in the war room, but if I was going to give advice, I would put a tracker on the website with the goal of signatures that we want. Be a little bit more transparent and just count the numbers. People like to see a moving thing on the screen to show progress. I would do that. And then, I'd probably stop it before a month. I do gamification, be more transparent. And that would be my advice to Brett to really get this thing going.
I just want to say I am not a naysayer of the idea. I am a naysayer of the lack of the lack of solid just details that we can make a decision with. I love the idea.
Yeah, I mean, if I saw by the end of July, a month, 4 weeks from now, if we had 1 million names and we had 2 people that we want to draft, then I, as a pro-Biden guy, would be like, this is interesting. But I would also say, if we don't get that at that point, my nightmare scenario is the automatic fail shut off device thing, like somehow, surprise, surprise, doesn't work, or we disagree on the data. And we wake up on November 4th and we're like, oh shit, Trump won Florida and North Carolina by a hair. And part of the narrative leading up to that was that both parties suck. They're just equally bad. Biden is garbage. And because Uni 2020 was starting to work, and it worked just well enough to influence the election. And now we look up and we've got Jared and, Barr and Ivanka running around like untethered, which to me is a nightmare scenario. I appreciate not everybody listening to this thinks that's that bad, but for me, it's like, oh my God, please. If you said Dark Horse Duo 2024, I might even give money now just to get you not to do 2020.
Yeah. I understand that concern, Tom, and I want to try to explain, I think, the perspective of people that don't share quite the level of fear and concern as you do, though I do think that concern is valid. And I think it goes back to what Andrew said during his stump speech, as he would say, Trump is not he's not the cause of all our problems. He's a symptom. And people look at it again and they say, well, if Biden becomes president for 4 years, is that going to fundamentally change the trajectory? Is that going to solve the actual problems that caused Donald Trump to get elected in the first place? And I feel like for a lot of people that's no. But there is, of course, there's a really good argument still to vote for Biden anyways, because well, we have to at least put ourselves in some sort of trajectory to move us out of this. And I think, was it you were talking about the Biden bridge on Twitter? Or is that somebody else?
Not me, but
okay, somebody was like hashtag Biden bridge. It's a bridge to 2024.
All right. Yeah. I like that argument. I mean, I know there's been the positioning of Biden as a transitional administration along those lines.
Yeah. But, some people, I think, I think some people, they just see things as just so like effed that it's like, what do we have to lose? And I don't know, like if that's something that I necessarily agree with, but I think it is like a feeling that's kind of valid.
Mm-hmm.